Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to show you all of my 5-star predictions. If you don't know what that is, this is a type of video that's quite popular here on BookTube, where I'm just going to show you a list of books that I think have a fairly good chance of becoming one of my all-time favorites. So I did call this video my 5-star predictions because that's basically what it's been called by everyone. But if you're a friend of mine over on Goodreads, then you know that I don't give star ratings. I used to do that, but I'm basically way too lenient with the stars that I give. I feel bad if I quite enjoy the book and I give it anything less than 4 stars. So in practice that meant that almost all of my books were 4 or 5-star reads, while I did have some critiques and some negative aspects that I felt were present in the book. So I stopped doing that. Sometimes I feel that I want to give a book 5 stars and then I do that, but most of the time I just read a book and I put it in my read list without giving it a star rating. So what I mean with 5 stars for the context of this video is a long-term favorite book. And I don't really have a lot of those. If we look at last year, then probably the Farseer trilogy is definitely a part of that, and of course Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier, because that's my favorite book of all time. And then probably maybe 2 more, so basically 4 in an entire year. That's not that much. And then this year I read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and this is definitely an all-time favorite for now, which is basically the reason why I wanted to do this video now. So I do have a list of 10 books here, and I think that these have a fairly good chance to become a long-term favorite. I think that I will enjoy most of these. I will be highly disappointed if I don't, but I also know that the chance is pretty small that all of these are going to be long-term favorites, because that's statistically highly unlikely. So we will see, and when I finish all of the 10 books that I have here, we will come back and we'll see how I did with my prediction. Some of these books are from authors that I have read in the past, but I think that more than half of these are from new to me authors, so that's quite exciting. But without further ado, let's jump into the list. So the first book that I want to show is one that I have mentioned a lot on the channel, so I am not going to go too deeply into this. This is one that I want to read quickly, hopefully this month. And that is The Sacred Hunt duology by Michelle West. So the first book is Hunter's Oath, the second one is Hunter's Death, and basically in this book you have animal companions, dogs more specifically, you have a forest-like setting, and you have a hunter god that has a pretty big presence in the story. All of this sounds fantastic and like I will love it, and I hope that I love it because Michelle West has actually written a lot of books and a very big series that I'm also interested in. So I will hopefully get to know if I like this pretty soon. I think that I will start it probably tomorrow. Then next up I have the first in a trilogy, but actually by an author that I have already read a lot of books by, and this trilogy is part in a bigger series, and you can basically see the series here behind me. So that is Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in a new trilogy, the third trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, and of course I know that we will follow Fitz here again after the events that take place in the Farseer trilogy. I love Fitz. Fitz is probably my favorite character of all time, the character that I have the most connection with, and so I am prepared to getting my heart broken here, but I know that I will love this. This will, unless Robin Hobb is really going to disappoint me, but I don't think she will, this is going to be one that I'm, probably of all of these, I'm most certain that this will be a long-term favorite. Then I have a first in a series, but by a new to me author, and that is Dragon Chair by Ted Williams. So again, this is the Dutch cover. And basically this is very traditional fantasy. A lot of people don't like that, but to be honest, I haven't read a lot of traditional fantasy. I think the closest that comes to traditional fantasy is Wheel of Time. And to be honest, the first book is probably my favorite book of the series because it's very traditional there. And everything else expands on it, and I liked the traditional qualities there, but I didn't like everything that was added on top, and basically everything that made it difficult with a ton of characters and you have different worlds and stuff like that. I won't go too deeply into that because of course spoilers, but that was what I didn't really like. Here it's a trilogy, so I imagine that it can't go too far away from all of the traditional tropes that it is going to explore here. We follow Simon. Simon is a kitchen boy, and then we have something, a quest I think. So it feels very traditional. If there's anything that I have learned from reading for a little bit over a year fantasy, it's that I really love when you have the underdog and then all of a sudden they have magical powers or they are more important for the world than they previously thought. I loved that in Mistborn Era 1. I loved that in The Poppy War. So I think that I will love this here as well with Simon. And I do want to read a little bit more traditional fantasy, because as I said before, that's something that I haven't read too much in the past. I've also heard that these books are a little bit slow, and that sounds like it's right up my alley. I hope that I will get some Fitz vibes here as well. Then next up I have another book by a new to me author, and that is The Last Queen by Signy Pike. This is the first book in what I think will be a bigger series. I know that at least the second book is out already, but I don't know if it's just a duology or if more books are to come. But in this book we follow a forgotten queen in Scotland. I know that there's definitely going to be a little bit of romance. The forgotten queen is the sister of the man that inspired the legend of Merlin. It's also said that they have been raised in the old ways, and then she needs to marry a Christian man, I think, or a Christian king even, but she's in love with a soldier who has also been raised in the old ways. So this feels like it's going to be a romantic fantasy, that it's very heavily inspired by nature magic, and I almost get some Juliette Marillier vibes, who is one of my favorite authors. So I'm actually highly excited for this book, and I hope that I can get to it soon. This is also one of the books that Badger reads, who is somebody that if she likes a book, then I am always excited to try that one as well, because I feel like our tastes are quite similar. So she liked this one, and she's the reason why I bought this book. So yeah, I have high hopes. So I just talked about my favorite author, which is Juliette Marillier, and I actually have quite a few of her trilogies or series that I haven't started yet, and one of them is, I think it's the Bride Chronicles. I don't really know how you pronounce that. Bride? Something like that. Please let me know how you pronounce this. But the first book is The Dark Mirror, and in this book you follow a man, and I think that he is of noble birth, but he is basically a foster child of a very magical druid. And one day they find a child on their doorstep. They know that it is being left by the fair folk, and everybody says, or at least the druids say, that the child should be put to death. But Bride, the child of a nobleman, at least he feels some kind of connection. He wants to keep her, so that's what's happening. And I think that it's, again, like all of Juliette Marillier's stories, it's going to have some romance, or at least most of Juliette Marillier's stories have that. I think that it's going to be very connected to nature with the druids and such, and all in all I think that I will really like this book. It's definitely not a new release. I think it's one of her earlier works, but Daughter of the Forest was also one of her earlier works, and that's my favorite book of all time. So this is also one that I think I will definitely love, but I don't know if it will be an all-time favorite, because all of the books from Juliette Marillier that I have read, I've loved all of them, but only Daughter of the Forest is one that I reread a lot of times. And I've only read it in October, so that means something. So I hope that this will be the same, but all in all, I know that I will love it. Then I have my most anticipated release of the year. This is when 2021 started. I only had one anticipated release, and this was it. And that is The Empire's Ruin by Brian Staveley. Brian Staveley is the author of the Chronicle of the Unhung Throne trilogy, which is a grim dark series, and was one of my favorites of last year. It's definitely an underrated series that I think deserves more love, so if you want to see my review, I will link that one down below. But he is actually working on a new trilogy that takes place a couple of years after the events of the Chronicle of the Unhung Throne, and the first one is The Empire's Ruin. I do know that definitely one of the characters that we have seen in the original trilogy is going to be present in this one as well. So I know I love the world, I know I love the magic system, I know I love Brian Staveley's writing style, and I know that I will love at least one character. So again, this is one that I'm fairly certain that I will love, but to see if it's a long-term favorite, I will have to wait until July. I think it comes out in July. I've pre-ordered it, so I'm ready to read it. Then I have another anticipated release, and that is For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This is, again, the first in a series. I think it's called the Wilderwood series, so definitely more to come. But the tagline says, the first daughter is for the throne, the second daughter is for the wolf. This sounds really intriguing. I've also seen that it's for fans of Uprooted and The Bear and the Nightingale. Now, Uprooted I didn't really love that much, but I did love the setting. It was just the execution that lacked something for me. And then The Bear and the Nightingale, I did forget to mention that in the beginning, but that's definitely an all-time favorite, so the stakes are high. I've also seen that Genevieve Gornichek either wants to read it or has already read it and was quite excited about it, and she is the writer of The Witch's Heart, which is another book that I really enjoyed. So I do want to read this one and see what I think of it. I also think that there's a romance but I don't think that that's the main plot. I think it's more in a forest-like setting with magic, and I think it will be a little bit dark maybe, not grimdark, but just that the magic in itself might be a little bit dark, so I'm quite excited about that as well. Then a book that I have again talked about in the past as well, and that is The Queens of Innisleer by Tessa Gratton. Tessa Gratton is an author that I want to read more from. I haven't read anything. She's a new for me author, but if I like this, there's definitely a lot of her works that I'm also interested in. I know that Elliot Brooks liked this book, I know that Badger Reed likes this, and it's often pitched as being quite slow. I love slow, so again, that's basically a plus for me. And you follow 3 daughters of a king. The queen is murdered, and I think that some daughters think that the king murdered their mother, basically, but at least one of them doesn't think so. And the 3 daughters are being described as a ruthless commander, a master manipulator, and a star-blessed priest. So again, this sounds like both the writing style as the plot and the characters are going to be right up my alley, so I hope that I can get to this one soon. And it's also a standalone, which is something that always excites me a little bit. Then I have another anticipated release, and that is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, and this is the first one in the Radiant Emperor series, so it's definitely going to be a bigger series. This is just the first one that I'm highly anticipating, because it says that it's basically a mix between Mulan and The Song of Achilles. I love Mulan, I haven't read The Song of Achilles yet, but I can definitely see what they mean by that, and it says that it's a queer, bold, and lyrical reimagining of the rise of the founding emperor of the Ming Dynasty. So I feel like this will be maybe a little bit similar to the Poppy War, where it's definitely based on a lot of historical events, and I loved that in the Poppy War. I'm definitely also looking for some more Asian-inspired fantasy books, and from the people that have read this, I think Tammy from Tammy Tries to Read, she has read or is reading The Ark and is enjoying it so far, so that is also making me a little bit more excited about this release, and I think that I will love it. And then for my last book on this list, it's another anticipated release. And for some of the books that I mentioned, there is definitely a theme going on. And that's also true for this one. Because the book is Dwolf and Woodsman by Ava Reed. This is, I think, a standalone, but it's also being compared to one of Naomi Novik's adult fairy tale retellings. But this time it's compared to Spinning Silver, and I actually adored Spinning Silver. And it's also compared to The Bear and the Nightingale. So I think it might be a little bit similar to For the Wolf, but I don't know for sure. What they say here is that it is based on Hungarian history, and it's also based on Jewish mythology, which is something that I don't know a lot about, but I'm very eager to learn more. And we follow a pagan woman with a lot of hidden powers and a one-eyed woodsman as they form an unlikely alliance against a tyrant ruler. So this sounds like I am going to like it. I think that it will be based in nature, based in woods a lot, with nature-based magic as well. And there might be a little bit of romance in this, or at least a very strong friendship. And both of those I would really like. So I'm also really anticipating the release of this one. So those were all of my 5-star predictions. And as you can see, all of them are in the adult fantasy category. That is something that I didn't really mention in the beginning, but I think that most of you were anticipating that. And I'm actually quite glad that I own most of them already, and the ones that I don't own are not out yet, and most of them I have pre-ordered. So I think that I did quite well. Please let me know if you have any 5-star predictions, or if you have read any of mine, and what you think of them. Do you think that I am doing quite okay with putting them on my list, or do you think that I won't love them that much? As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Bye!